torture was something we very carefully avoided. One of the reasons we went to the Justice Department on the program was because we wanted them to tell us where's the line legally between what's acceptable and what isn't, and they did. That's what came forth in the legal opinion that we got before proceeding with the program, Brett. This is in terms of there being some problems in the program. There may well have been, but I don't think they represented, that the Senate report represents the truth of what actually happened. They put together a report without ever talking to anybody who's involved in the program.
All right, that was the Vice President, Dick Cheney, and joining us now is John Yoo, Professor of Law at Berkeley Law, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General at the Department of Justice, co-drafter of the so-called torture memos, I always hate to use that term, and author of Point of Attack, Preventive War, International Law, and Global Welfare. There it is on your screen. John, welcome back, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
Well, it's my pleasure. You are the man who signed off on all of these techniques that are now being trashed through the media that were called out on the floor of the Senate by Dianne Feinstein. I would assume you would say that it's all being done unfairly.
Yes, and I think in an unprecedented way that doesn't comport with the best traditions of the Senate and the way our Constitution wants our separation of powers to run. The biggest flaw, the fundamental flaw of this report is that it's not done in a bipartisan way. That's not Republicans and Democrats. Every investigation by Congress into the intelligence agencies in our past, the 1975 Church Committee, the 1987 Iran-Contra report, those were both done with Republicans and Democrats, because otherwise you can't trust that one party isn't going to manipulate the results. But then it gets worse. It gets worse because as a lawyer, this really offends me. This committee, the Feinstein Committee, chose not to interview anybody. They did not interview any of the government officials, including myself. Didn't even call me, didn't even ask me. I would have been happy to testify. They did not interview anybody connected with the report. This means that the report has to be biased and flawed. It's as if a court, in a court, a judge had said, okay, the prosecution gets to make its case, and we're not going to call any witnesses, and the defense never gets to show up.
Now, so you say if they had called you, you would have gone in and have been interviewed by her committee?
Of course, and I think many of the other people named in the report would. I was just referred to as a Justice Department lawyer, but there are people who are accused of, violating rules, violating the law, violating protocol. But I think now that you see the responses by the CIA directors and other people are coming forward to show that many of the things in the report aren't true. Take one example, the most important example, the bin Laden operation. One of the key claims of the Feinstein report is that none of this interrogation yielded any intelligence at all. It didn't matter. I think this is flatly wrong if you look at what happened with bin Laden. We found bin Laden because we were able to identify the courier who led us there. Now, according to the committee, well, the courier's name was in the CIA database of a suspected Al-Qaeda member. But that doesn't matter. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of possible Al-Qaeda suspects in the CIA database. It was only the interrogations of people like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and other Al-Qaeda leaders that allowed us to pinpoint the exact person, pull that name out of the database and follow him because he was bin Laden's courier. If you believe the Feinstein report, that would have happened anyway. Yeah, it might have happened 10, 20 years from now. But with the need for actionable intelligence after the 9/11 attacks, our agency was able, CIA was able to use those techniques, and they got intelligence that led us to find and kill bin Laden.
And so, and to the claim that I think she made that no intelligence that was gained that could not have been gotten another way led to anything, prevented anything. That's false, right?
I think that's flatly false. The other than the bin Laden case is, how did we find all these other Al-Qaeda leaders, not just Abu Zubaydah, who was the first one, but Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the planner of the 9/11 attacks, Ramzi bin al-Shibh, you can go down the list. We've been able to capture or kill almost all of the original leadership of Al-Qaeda. The Feinstein report is actually quite silent on how that happened because it's an inconvenient fact for Senator Feinstein that the information that led to all of those successes was produced mostly by the interrogations.
All right, John, stay where you are. We're talking to John Yoo. He's the man who was really at the center of signing off in the Justice Department at the time on these enhanced interrogation techniques. And we will continue with the professor of law at Berkeley when we come back right here on the Steve Malzberg Show. All right, folks, continuing our conversation with John Yoo. John, before we get to more particulars about the report and the accusations, you were on CNN on Aaron Burnett's show last night, and right after the interview, Jeffrey Toobin took to the air, and he said, and I wrote it down, and I couldn't find the video of it, but I wrote it down as accurately as I could find it. He said that you, John Yoo, are near the top of the list of villains in this whole affair. How do you respond to that?
I think Toobin's just unhappy that he wasn't allowed to appear at the same time with me. That's funny. I've been with him face to face on panels and things, and he doesn't man up enough to say that to my face. I'm really disappointed in him.
Yeah, you know, and he also said that it's outrageous that you are still defending the tactics. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that our legal judgment was correct then, and I think it's still correct. Of course, if the facts were different, I might be open to changing my mind, but I don't think that what you see in the Feinstein report is reliable because of its one-sided, biased nature. But it's fine for people like Jeff Toobin to try to, make news or get out there by using inflammatory rhetoric, but he wasn't there. He wasn't in the government. He hasn't seen any of the threat reports or the things that were on the minds of the government at that time. And so I would discount what his view is too.
Is it a Monday morning quarterbacking thing, or is it more of a backseat driving thing?
Well, I think that's true of the Feinstein report. I mean, Feinstein at the time in 2002 was saying things in public that we were asking the agency, CIA, to do things that we'd never done in the past because of the new threat. And now I think this is just an effort by Democrats to wiggle out of responsibility for policies that they were briefed on, that they implicitly approved, that they funded, but they don't like it. I think this really reflects something deeper about many Senate Democrats, is that they fundamentally are hostile to the CIA and our intelligence agencies, and I don't think have the stomach for the long-term fight against our terrorist enemies abroad.
Let me ask you this. If you were in the Justice Department today, what would you say to President Obama's use of the drone program?
This is another thing. I mean, I wonder if Jeff Toobin or these other Senate Democrats are going to go out there and accuse President Obama of being a war criminal because, well, they like to look at the UN and all kinds of other commentary from outside the country. They all think the use of drones is a war crime. And I would say, let's count up the numbers. I mean, you have enhanced interrogation is tough, right? Waterboarding is used on 3 Al-Qaeda leaders, and that's it. Drones not only kill Al-Qaeda leaders, which I think is a bad idea, not because I have any sympathy for them, but because we lose the intelligence they have, but it kills hundreds of civilians who are nearby. I think the drone attacks, from what I read, have killed more than 500 innocent civilians near the targets. And I would ask all these critics of the Bush interrogation policy, do you really care about human rights if you're willing to turn a blind eye to those kinds of figures, or are you doing it just because it's for partisan support for a Democratic president?
What was the participation in your experience? Did you have any FaceTime with George W. Bush in talking about these? We hear now he didn't know this, he didn't know that until later on. What was your experience with him regarding these tactics?
Well, I didn't directly brief President Bush. That's not the way that the White House, this White House or any White House, is organized and run. But I know he was briefed on it. You can't have a decision like this made unless the president fully understands it. I'm certain that the people who did brief him would have been the CIA director and the Attorney General and the White House counsel. And I think the Feinstein report is utterly mistaken when it suggests otherwise.
John, I spoke to John Rizzo earlier, and he said he's concerned with traveling overseas eventually and maybe being arrested and prosecuted. Excuse me. Do you have any such fear? And do you have any fear, even though they've said they wouldn't, that this administration might try to do similar things?
Well, I'm sorry that John Rizzo has those worries. It's a great loss to resorts all around the world that they won't be able to enjoy John Rizzo's presence, or mine, I suppose. But I don't think it's something that the United States government should worry about. And like again, it actually goes to the drone issue again. If American officials are worried about traveling abroad because of these interrogation measures, then all the people in the Obama administration who've been involved with the drone program should be equally worried, because the UN thinks those are illegal too.
Yeah, absolutely. It could come back to bite them, as one of our guests said yesterday. John, great to talk to you. Proud to know you, and thank you for being there. And thank you for, again, as I said to you the first time I met you in the studio, thank you for being there at that time and making the tough decisions to keep us safe.
Oh, Steve, thanks a lot for having me. I'm happy to come back anytime.
All right. Thank you very much. And don't forget his book, John's book, Point of Attack, Preventive War, International Law, and Global Welfare. John Yoo, ladies and gentlemen. All right. There's the book again on the screen. All right. We're going to come back and we're going to talk to former Assistant Secretary of Defense Richard Pearl. He will be here to weigh in on the Feinstein report and more. So don't go away. It's all coming up next on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax TV.